way from the other side of the Atlantic, Jacob Prash. How are you, Jacob?
Blessings and greetings in Jesus. Wonderful to be back in Britain from Europe, and wonderful to be with all of you, no matter where you are. Down under, States, Europe, South Africa, we're all one in Jesus. Not
Amen.
to leave out our friends and brethren in Israel.
Amen. God bless you, Jacob. Thanks for joining us. And of course, from, I guess, an undisclosed location on the West Coast, David Lister. How you doing, David?
All right. I'm in Oregon. Okay.
All right.
On a fellowship drive number 3. Tonight, I'll be in Medford, Oregon at the Homewood Suites there, small town. And then I will we'll be there 2 nights, and Saturday or Sunday we start heading back up north, and we'll go up to the Hampton Inn and Palley.
Yeah, hold on, David. We'll talk about the fellowship
drive
that
later, but just welcome.
Yeah, just wanted to say hi.
Yeah,
I know you're eager to tell us a lot about it. No worries.
Sorry.
Jay, not too far from my house. Jay, how are you?
I'm good. Just coming to you through the picket lines here in sunny west coast of California.
It looks great from here. And down under, it's already Saturday where he's at. Davey, how are you, brother?
Doing pretty good, thanks, brothers.
Amen. Well, I want to welcome everyone, those who are watching live and those who will watch later. Welcome to Catching Up with Jacob. Blessings in the name of the Lord Jesus. And we just make a few announcements before we get started as we catch up with Jacob, as we catch up with David on the Fellowship Drive. And some of our announcements are going to be related to where Jacob's going to be at. So, Jacob, where are you going to be at soon? I mean, you're there in the UK, but you're not staying there too long.
We are just finalizing the itinerary for South Africa. I will be in South Africa from the 11th to the 20th of August. The venues will be posted very, very shortly. They're finalizing them today and tomorrow. That'll be South Africa. After South Africa, of course, I will be in the United States with David Lister. That itinerary is also in its early stages of planning what I'm doing in America in September. It'll certainly include places like New York City and the usual venues, most likely. Then India is at the end of the year. More about that towards the end of the year. But after South Africa, we have the Moriel Conference in England. We had a great conference in Scotland. Now we have one in England with Pastor Mark Jackson, Pastor Tim Leach, and myself. That is the 17th to the 19th of November in the English Midlands. Following that will be India. So it'll be South Africa, United States conference, then it will be India towards the end of the year. That is my current itinerary.
Praise God. Hey, if Putin's there, make sure you say hi to him.
Yeah, well, I'll be in South Africa during the BRICS conference in South Africa. I'll be there at the same time I arrive.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. We'll get you some credentials. You can go in there and report live from the BRICS Center. David, you're up in, you're north of me right now. Fellowship Drive, you started telling us about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're leaving Eugene, Oregon here today. And tonight we'll be at the Homewood Suites in Hilton, Medford for 2 nights. And so please come. The meetings start at 6:30. If you're anxious, come over a little early. We'll be there. And then after this, we have a long day's drive as we head back up to Washington, where we're gonna on the Monday and Tuesday we'll be at the Hampton Inn Suites in Tacoma, Palley up. I didn't pronounce that correctly, but we'll be
Puyallup.
there.
Oh, Puyallup.
Yeah, Puyallup.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the right way. And then after that, we will be at the Home 2 Suites by Hilton in Marysville. Looking forward to that. We've already met a couple people from there, a really nice couple, really on fire for the Lord. They're coming there, and man, they would make a good team to bring on to Moriel maybe in the future or something there. And then finally we kind of end the drive in the Home 2 Suites at Hilton in Bellingham Airport on the 28th and 30th. So it's a good drive. Now, Jacob mentioned we'll be going up starting in Salt Lake City and then going into South Dakota, Montana, some of the other areas in and around there. We'll be hammering that out soon. So stay tuned for that. And then Marco, you and I and Davey are going to Australia. Well, Davey will meet us there.
Yes.
We're going to be in Australia, New Zealand from this tour will probably start about the 3rd of November, and we'll be leaving there around the 23rd, although Davey says we might want to extend it a couple, 3 days, and we'll visit either the South Island or Perth or something. We'll figure that out. So details are coming on that. And then from there, I'm going over to be going to Thailand, where Scott Noble has gotten us into 3 more prisons with women, and they're maximum security prisons. And so this is really good. We're trying to get into even 4 more, where there's some men's prisons there, about a half hour south of Bangkok. And this is really exciting. And then we have our normal prison work and other evangelism stuff we'll be doing in Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai, things like this, also with the long neck women and the San tribes. But then we'll go for the highlight of the year, where we'll go and visit the kids in Philippines, who have just finished their summer camp. They're all excited. We've got all the computers up and running over there now, 4 of them. Our center is expanding, and we're going to get to take them to the Jollibee.
Amen.
Love the Jollibee. They have some here in California now. So this
Yep,
is
you got a
good stuff.
headquarters out there on the 10 going out there
the 10.
towards you.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, it's a culture there. You see these women 40, 50 years old, they turn into little girls when that
No,
Jollibee comes in.
that's awesome.
It's just
That's awesome.
something, just such joy that they have there, So anyway, it's a highlight for me. I know it's always been a highlight for Jacob when he goes there. He loves to have the kids sing to him and everything.
Amen. Hey, next year, Jacob, with the kids. That'll be a lot of fun. Also,
Yes.
if you have questions about the New Zealand and Australia meetings that we're going to have with David Lister and I, there is an email you can ask more information. Davey, do you have that with us?
Yes, just to email us at ccodausanz@gmail.com. And please let us know where you're located to. It'll help us in formulating our on-the-ground itinerary. So that's ccodausanz New Zealand @gmail.com.
Yeah, so our church is excited. CCOD reaching out to Australia, New Zealand, as well as Moriel. So what a wonderful time. May the Lord give us a lot of grace to deal with all that. So praise the Lord. And we also have our podcast schedule. Jay, you can help us with that.
Absolutely. As you guys are aware, we are available on TuneIn, Alexa, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Podcast Addict, Podchasers, Pocket Cast, Deezer, and Listen Notes. This week, for the podcast, we have on 722, the Weekend Bible Study with Jacob Prash, The Sum of Thy Word is Truth. On 723, we have the Sunday morning service, the Book of Colossians. On 724, we have this episode of Catching Up with Jacob. On 725, we have a Bible study by Sandy Simpson, 1 Corinthians 3. 726, we have Ken's Corner, episode 19. 727, Jacob's midweek Bible study, Jesus on the Throne. 728, we have Jacob Prash, Preparing for Persecution, part 3. And on 729, we have the Weekend Bible Study with Jacob Prash, The Great Transition. Moriel podcasts are available for you to download, so you can listen to them anytime. Please make sure that you take this opportunity to download and listen whenever you want.
Amen.
Also, every Thursday, of course, we are going presently through the book of Exodus, and we're up to Exodus chapter 12 on Thursday. That's in the evening in the UK. It's in the daytime in the USA, but it's always posted. You can watch it anytime, day or night, beginning on the following day, Friday, today.
Very good. Yeah. So
Yeah, and just to
those
follow up with
midweek.
that, Marco, real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you need, you can join the actual Zoom call by looking
Yes.
at the Moriel community page on YouTube, which will have the link and the link to the Zoom call. So join us. Lots of
Yeah.
people fellowshipping there.
Yep,
Yeah.
we post it every week. So you go there. Sandy has one on Wednesdays, Jacob's on Thursday. We're here on Friday. We just about cover every day of the week. 7-day Jesus. 7-day
Amen.
Jesus. Amen.
So
So
we are not huge, but we punch above our weight by God's grace. We have missions, we have branches, and we have satellites in multiple countries. If you're in Denmark, there's Moriel. If you're in Europe, Moriel is based in Holland, where I just was. If you're in Canada, there's Moriel. If you're in Australia, there's Moriel. If you're in New Zealand, there's Moriel. If you're in India, there's a Moriel. The Philippines, there's a Moriel. Japan, there's a Moriel. Thailand, there's a Moriel. Israel, there's a Moriel. And of course, the UK and the USA, there are Moriels. We are not huge, but we're not small. By God's grace, we punch above our weight. We have branches, satellite branches, and missions in multiple countries. Please, whatever country you're in, make yourself known, get in contact with our local branch. We'd love to hear from you.
yes, and people don't know, although that there's no branch in South America. Many of us speak Spanish. If there's questions in Spanish or messages that you'd like to send us in Spanish, I speak Spanish. Jacob speaks Spanish. Jacob, you want to say hi to our Spanish friends?
¿Qué tal? Voy a ser hermanos en Cristo, América Central, América del Sur y también en España. Yo soy Jacobo, esto es mi buen hermano en Cristo, Marco, de nuestro ministerio es Moriel Ministries en muchos países, pero en la futura nosotros gustamos una Moriel también en posible México o Colombia o Argentina.
Gracias,
Vamos
Señor.
vamos a
Amen.
ver.
Amen. And we want every nation to hear the gospel. So Latinoamérica para Cristo, Latinoamérica para Cristo. That's our desire. Well, we have so much to say. We can never get into catching up if we would just go on so many things, but visit Moriel.org. If you have other questions, visit Moriel.org, Moriel.tv, Morieltv.org for the media and audio. But if you want more information on the missions, Moriel.org, and you can find a lot of information there. All right. Jacob, let's catch up. David, let's catch up. A couple of topics that were on my mind. We're not going to talk too much about it, but Tony Bennett died. He was 96 years old. Jacob, any thoughts on? I know you probably grew up listening to some of his songs. I don't know if you're a big fan. A lot of people are mourning today the death of a legend, they say.
Everybody I ever encountered or have seen talk about him, who's met him and knew him, say he was a very, very exceptionally nice person. Obviously a talented person, but a nice person. Tony Bennett got in trouble in the U.S. military, in the Army, in the 1940s because he was against segregation of black troops who he served with. He stood up against segregation policies that were in the U.S. military back in the 1940s. He was always just that kind of person. You know, I remember when I was a kid, he came to England and met with the Beatles and introduced the Beatles for an award. And he was so much loved here in Britain. I am of the generation or two after him, of course, in San Francisco. Unfortunately, coming from the Haight-Ashbury era, I left my brain in San Francisco. But at least we have San Francisco in common.
That's fine. Well, San Francisco's become something else. I probably left my wallet there.
Yeah.
In San Francisco. David, any thoughts on Tony Bennett passing away? I don't know if you're a big fan or not. Did we lose David?
David,
Well,
you
I had heard Tony Bennett was around every Christmas, all the holiday specials. He always sang "My Father Loved Him," but he was a good entertainer. He had a wonderful voice, and I remember him from many, many specials in my youth and everything. And even he did he made a big comeback working with many, many of today's stars who loved him also, from Gaga to T.D. Lang to just all of them made duets, and a lot of those made it to the charts. And I think he got 3 or 4 Emmys for that album. So he entertained across the generations, and what a wonderful voice.
My only hope is that he knew Jesus.
That's
right.
it.
When a
That's
nice
it.
guy gives up the ghost, that's what I think of. You know, you're
Yeah.
a nice guy, a talented lady, and I'm happy for that. And it was nice to have had you in the planet. But did you know the Lord Jesus?
That's right.
That's what I always think of.
The sum of your life comes to that question, right, Jacob? The sum
That's
of your
right.
life, no matter what you did, is did you know Christ? Did you know Christ? Well, there's so many things we can say, where to start. You know, the Biden regime wants to ban generators. We can talk about the New Zealand shooting, and there's a lot more speculation in terms of what happened. There's not a whole lot to say. It's right before the Women's World Cup. But let's start with the political landscape in the United States, because I think in people's minds, the Leadership Summit in Iowa was something of an interesting scenario. It created more of an environment where a lot of these so-called conservative candidates, Jacob and David, they're just simply repeating the same line that even the Biden administration repeats in terms of how they're going to get these things done, how they're going to move forward, and including one of the candidates is going to be Mike Pence. And boy, did he commit some kind of political suicide. We can just talk about that for a moment. He says American cities are not his concern. He's not as concerned of the persecution of Christians or religious minorities in Ukraine, or religious majority in Ukraine. He says that there's none, which is it's proven false, that there is persecution from the Zelensky administration there. But it just seems like leader after leader, no matter who they were, they almost repeated the same line. Keep feeding Ukraine more money and more weapons. We're going to secure the border. They're just talking points. There's really no, almost platitudes. There's really no indication of how they would do it. But for Pence to say that American cities are not his concern, even though you see the destruction of American cities, we'll talk about that in a moment, it's just laughable. Jacob, did he just commit political suicide? Is he going to get one vote this time around?
By having said that, any conservative who was thinking of voting for him or is not going to. And in fact, even many rhinos, having heard that, are going to be disturbed by it. Now, Pence was a rhino. He was not a conservative. He was an establishment Republican. I've never believed. I at one time thought he could have been a conservative, but he wasn't. He was a rhino, and he's proved that. But his political opposition, even within his own party, are going to replay this and replay this and replay this as often as is necessary. There is no way he will be viable in running for the nomination. Absolutely no way.
He says he supports military intervention. At the same time, prioritizing, he says, religious freedom and the sanctity of life. Talking points, platitudes, but no real plans. And he says, look, the American cities, I think Tucker Carlson had a good question. Look, American cities are being destroyed. They're worse off now than they've ever been.
And his response was outrageous.
Not his concern. Well, let's talk about some American cities, and we'll talk about some other European cities. David Lister, you've been around the West Coast this time around. Washington, Oregon. Your thoughts on the American cities and what Pence said those are not his concern?
Well, spiritually, I have to tell you, I've gone around the cities, and it really is just a remnant everywhere. The problems that are happening in the cities is, even if a church is solid, it's the pastors are teaching milk. You talk to the pastors, it's apathy among the congregations. For a lot of people, they can't find a church, which we're seeing on the fellowship drives. They go to churches they know are not the best, but at least they have a few friends that they can fellowship with there. but there is a desperation. Now that I've come to the West Coast, I have to tell you, I guess I feel kind of isolated there in Dover in Tennessee, is that it's so nice there. And there's not a lot of this wokeness, but I tell you, I have never seen anything like Salem, Oregon, the capital of Oregon. It was very, very dark. There were 6 pot stores on one street. They have more, okay, in the town, but every business I saw downtown was welcoming small children. There was a giant store, a giant store with those clothing that Target got in trouble for binding, and then ugly slogans on them that such as they put on the little kids that abortion is health care, and and then if you're talking about killing kids, that's the NRA,
Oh
and
man.
Black Lives Matter and everything. This was on the churches, the United Methodist Church. All are welcome. Love is love. Well, love is very specifically taught on 1 Corinthians 13. But the love that the world is saying is a love that you can love sin,
Yeah.
And so you have this problem. And so I couldn't believe everywhere I walked, there were in Salem, we walked all around shops that were selling crystals and had courses on conversing and working with demons. Actually had this courses. The flags, the rainbow flags, it's like they marked themselves for destruction. Yeah, that they stole that, saying God would never destroy the world with fire, with water, but now he's coming and they've marked themselves. Instead of having the blood of the lamb, they're putting that rainbow there and he'll know right where to go. But these shops were horrible, the vast amount of stuff there. Every one of them were inviting children into their place. They could be safe because they have these laws now in Oregon, 2 terrible ones, that the kids can come in, claim a sanctuary, and then they can be transitioned,
Wow.
without the permission of the adults. And now just yesterday or day before, I believe, the governor signed the bill to have anonymous abortions on teenagers.
Right. Underage.
Yeah. You can go there and have an abortion, and no parent has to say, these cities are being marked for destruction. God's wrath, cup of wrath is filling up. I was shocked. Look, I know I've seen a lot of this stuff over the days, and I've seen a lot of wicked things, but I haven't seen this level before.
Wow.
I remember Portland, Oregon was a really nice city.
Yeah.
It was a nice city. Now it's a suburb of hell. But it was a nice city. It was a really nice place. In England and in Great Britain, we have towns dedicated to the kind of thing, occult, drugs, etc., that David Lister describes. In England, we have one called Glastonbury, where there's an annual rock festival, but it's just exactly what he described. That's the main industry of the town, is that. There's one in Scotland where New Ages convocate called Finhorn. This whole town dedicated to it. And it's everything from the resurrection of Wicca, Anglo-Saxon witchcraft, all this druids, things with ancient origins that are resurfacing in a post-Christian Britain. Now remember, the druids were the first enemies of the gospel in Britain.
That's right.
You had an Archbishop of Canterbury who was one. Literally, he was a member of a Druid cult, a sect, and he was the Archbishop of Canterbury. It's very much like what Isaiah and Jeremiah talked about was happening in Israel and Judah. The same kind of thing, and it's going to end in the same exact kinds of results. The same exact kinds of results. It's going to come to that. If you want to know what's happening, what's going to happen, read Isaiah, read Jeremiah, read Amos, read Hosea. That's what's happening.
Yeah, I remember, Jacob, when we first met you, early 2000, you used to say, or at least in some messages, just say England, Europe, it's post-Christian, neo-pagan. Fast forward 23 years later, how do you feel now?
The only conspicuous belief in God I see in Europe, in continental Europe particularly, is Islam.
Wow.
Every little town. I was in Bad Orb, Germany, a little town where I was, and it's got Muslims, it's got mosques everywhere. More so in Belgium, more so in Holland, and especially in France. It's just all over the place. And they are observant in their religion.
Wow.
Christianity is not. In Germany, you have the Stadtkirche, the state church, which is Lutheran. That's the Protestant one, and the Catholic Church. And they're supported by taxes. They're supported by the government.
That's a state church, yeah.
Less than 2% of the people attend them.
Wow.
Now, can you imagine how few born-again believers there are? And of course, the ones that are there are largely caught up in this stuff coming from America, or Australia, the Hillsong, or not so much Elevation in Europe, a little bit, but more of Bill Johnson type stuff. It's here. It's just, and that is what little Christianity there is. We are just vulnerable sitting duck waiting for something terrible to happen, waiting for something very, very terrible to happen.
So salt and light is very, very, very few in Europe.
No. And the economic conditions in Europe now are so dismal. They're looking for a savior, and it's not going to be Jesus.
Yeah, they are looking for a savior. I wanted to bring this up because a couple of laws you guys mentioned in the states, especially in Oregon, Washington, and one of them was, well, it happened before, they passed it already, sex changes for kids, that you can actually basically traffic kids into those states anonymously. You don't have to tell the parents. Youth organizations that host these kids can take them to a basically facility where they can get sex changes without ever telling their parents. And this has been a big problem with Idaho and Wyoming, which is the states that are nearest to those West Coast states, that Idaho doesn't want their kids to go there. Wyoming doesn't want their kids to go there, but people take them into Washington and Oregon.
Let's understand something. It was a crime to transport a minor across the state line without parental approval. Up until about 25 to 30 years ago, it was a crime to transport a minor across the state line without parental approval. Now they've got refuge states where an underage child can come, flee from the authority of their parents, and have a sex change operation.
Or an abortion.
Or an abortion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's unreal. So that this is why, in my mind, Jacob and David, I talked about this before, the balkanization of the states, how it's so divided. Idaho says we don't want our kids to go there. I guess there may come a point, Jacob, where maybe states will have border patrols from state to state because of the crime. I mean, one is completely open to drugs. We haven't talked about it. Oregon and Washington, any kind of drugs you can, a small amount, of course, but any kind of drugs are open. The biggest ones I've seen, it's in BC and Vancouver and Canada, but Oregon and Washington, they're not any different. Now they're talking about using methamphetamine and psychedelics to deal with hate and racism and anti-gay phobia and anti-Semitism. This is ridiculous. Can you imagine MDMA given to someone to treat anti-Semitism, or they say anti-LGBT? These are and they're just waiting for the FDA to approve it within the next 2 years. LSD is already a thing. Can you imagine methamphetamine? You said you're a racist. You said you don't like gay people. Here, we're gonna sequester you and give you some methamphetamine to deal with that. the ramifications are going to be incredible.
Of course.
Yeah, they have been some studies. This is what they base it on. Some studies that people are more calm, more sedated, more, I guess you could say more, their brain is more malleable if they take some of these drugs.
You know, if anybody thinks that crystal meth is going to sedate somebody, they don't have a mind. They are encephalic. They have no brain.
Well, but
If you took an X-ray of their skull, if you did a cranial X-ray, there'd be no brain. Anybody who thinks that crystal meth has a calming effect, I only thank God I got saved out of the drug world
praise God.
before freebasing, before crack cocaine. I thank God I got saved out of it before that, because I don't think I would have survived it.
Oh, yeah. Now you got fentanyl, you got Trank, you know, that tranquilizer for horses in Philadelphia, and it's getting everywhere. I just got a message about Australia just legalized mahon mushrooms for mental health as of July 1st. Mushrooms.
Sorry, magic mushroom. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Magic
mushrooms.
Okay. I thought it was a type of mushroom. No worry, type of mushroom. Magic mushrooms for mental health.
When I was a hippie, we used to take magic mushrooms and psilocybin mushrooms and things like that. And as far as mental health, it just made us crazy.
Which is again another sedation of not just sedation, but just people are tuned out. What was the old saying from Timothy Leary?
Yeah, tune on, turn in, drop out. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, the hippies of my era, we used peyote, we used mescaline, we used these drugs that now they're making them mainstream.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have seen happen is after the hippie era, I got into the New York underground scene with people who followed the artist Andy Warhol, and they followed the rock band, the Velvet Underground, and things like this, where nobody was singing about hippies and flower power. Now they were singing about heroin and transvestites, and it was a crazy, crazy world. And there was after hours bars we would hang out in and stuff. And these people had an alternative universe. It was like a Fellini movie, Satricon, is the way it came the reality of these people. And I was in this scene. And now that stuff that was underground is becoming mainstream. Yeah. They had Megyn Kelly talked about, I don't like her vulgarity, but she is a talented presenter. So homosexuals marching publicly down the street with semi-naked, and one homosexual with a whip beating another one in front of him, parading down the street in front of kids.
Yeah.
Now, I knew about the sadomasochism scene, and I knew about transvestites, and I knew drag queens, and I knew all of that stuff. But it was in an underground environment. You know what I mean? It was in after hours bars in New York, in like the meatpacking district. You know what I mean? You wouldn't have it. Place out, but there was a club like the Hellfire and the Anvil, and they were into sadomasochism and all this kind of stuff. And okay, I knew about that stuff, and I knew people were really into it, but it was underground. Now they're parading in front of kids.
Mainstream, yeah. I just got a message from Ken. Ken's telling me Arizona and California, huge
Marco?
magic mushrooms in California and Arizona. Incredible. Yeah, David, go ahead.
Yeah, Marco, what's interesting that all these laws that Oregon and all these people are basing it on was the law that there in Portugal, which had decriminalized things several years ago. But Portugal is now reevaluating what they're doing. And Oregon, just this recent session here in the state legislature there in Salem, they're having to redo this because the problem is it's not working out like it's had, because what's happening is you've got drugs now that were probably okay during Jacob and my day, but now these drugs are being used, but they're often being mixed or made in with other drugs such as fentanyl. Pot is being laced with other things. And so you're having a great amount of ODs, which, we had 100,000 people OD'd in America alone last year, but this is now worldwide. And then on top of this, you have the pot is the 130%. You were talking about something that was maybe 2 to 5%, and so people are becoming psychotic, and then so they're moving from pot into these other drugs, and now they're addicted. What happened here in Oregon is they're saying, well, we're just giving them a ticket, but then they've now said no, they got to be forced into a rehab, and this goes against the decriminalization of drugs. But the people do need it, but they're fighting against it. So the whole thing is in chaos, as far as drugs.
I don't think they're going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle.
No, I don't either.
Now,
Yeah, I think once you go down that road, it's just going to be absolute mayhem.
Never in our day would a killer, a pusher, want to kill a customer. You know what I mean? Now they don't seem to have a problem with it. They don't care if they OD or anymore. There's more coming. So it's a very different day. But if Jacob can confirm this, that Revelation does said there would be an increase in pharmakia in the last day.
Yeah, Jacob,
And
talk about the demonic
it's
aspect of it. Yeah, demonic aspect of it.
On this road I'm on right now, we counted 12 different places between Salem and Eugene for selling pot. 12, and it was only less than like 45 miles.
Man, it's like that. And I went to Colorado, and it's like that. So the statement of Penn saying the worst cities in America has become worse, the cities have become worse, that's not his concern. It is just absolutely laughable. It is absolutely laughable. That is unbelievably wrong. And but this is again the Republican Party. The Republican Party has gone in that direction. Let's talk a little bit about the big problem that Biden is having, which is the. Let me mute David here real quick, because I think it's just there you go. The problem in the administration that Biden's having is the U.S. is dangerously low on munitions, as well as NATO is very low on munitions. And this has been reported in Europe. This has been reported in the States. And it's going to take at least 5 years to replenish. Many think that way, at least among think tanks. And so this program that they're running in the Ukraine is not working well. NATO stockpiles are becoming dangerously low. This was reported by the U.S. Air Forces in Europe, James Hecker. And so there's been a big problem. Germany's trying to get munitions going up fast by getting these companies to produce a lot more. And they committed 700 million euros in tanks and munitions to NATO in order to help Ukraine. Maybe it'll help down the road. I don't know. But this war seems to be unending, Jacob.
But we have to understand, again, something that's not talked about in the mainstream media. What the war is about, as far as American interest and NATO interest, but particularly American interest, it's not just the Ukraine. It's BRIC. It is not wanting the ruble to become a petrocurrency that can in any way be competitive with the dollar.
Yeah.
And the war is something, a gift that Putin has given to the West to cause a massive devaluation of the Russian ruble. This is something that's going to be a big issue in South Africa at the BRIC conference because of the hostility between India and China, on top of the controversy if Putin will attend or not. The United States has a vested interest in causing economic instability in Russia. Russia has large gold reserves. Russia has large natural gas and oil reserves. Putin had a design to replace the dollar in which the ruble would be a pivotal currency. Their American interest is not just about Ukraine, or not even primarily about Ukraine. It is about preventing another reserve currency. I'm quite convinced that is a very major factor in what they're doing and why.
Yeah, we're going to talk about BRICS at the end, Jacob, because that goes right into the CBDC. Because what BRICS is planning, it's having their own central currency, reserve currency, backed by gold. But there's also other plans that the West has, which is in the form of a digital currency, which they're both competing for which one is going to be the major currency in the world. But I did want to go back to the war, because it seems, and this has been reports from Germany and Poland, that parts of the Ukraine may be broken off. The East, they don't think they can get it back. The West may be something of a break-off with Kiev as its main capital, and Poland and Germany very much wanting to make deals with the western part of Ukraine. Do you think it's going to go the way of Yugoslavia, the way Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro went, Jacob?
That could very well happen. If they negotiate, what is Putin going to get? He wants those eastern provinces. Yeah. That is for sure. And he wants to keep Crimea. That is for sure. On the other hand, it might result in what happened to Germany. Russia got the East. West Germany remained in NATO.
Good point.
You might be bringing Ukraine into NATO. Right now, there is a low interest, or has been a low interest, in Ukraine joining NATO. If a partition of Ukraine takes place, that would create the impetus to bring Ukraine into NATO. So Putin would once again be shooting himself in the foot.
Marco, I don't know if anybody saw the report. While we're low on ammunition, and so is NATO, Putin just called up 300,000 more reserves to fight.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a problem. He probably has the arms. He probably has the weapons to supply those guys.
They're making ammo 24/7. The companies in Russia have been making ammo 24/7 for the last few years, and the West has not. So while the West is interested in, this is interesting. While the West is interested in pronouns and them, they, and all that stuff, right? Woke stuff. I was told this. You guys talk about that book, what's that Chinese general, Sun Tzu,
The Art of War.
Some of these generals in Russia have been, that's been their playbook. That's been their playbook. Yeah. So, I wouldn't put lightly what Russia's trying to do and destroy Ukraine, but it is a matter of ideologies, and it's a matter of what exactly is the U.S. going to do long term, because how long can this go on? I mean, until the last Ukrainian dies? Is that really their end goal to it? So I think we're going to have to see something change, of some kind of peace treaty, but no one seems to be talking peace. Even the Republican guys in the leadership summit, there was nobody talking peace. Not one. Yeah.
Why would Russia, if they have enough troops and we're out of ammunition, want to come to the peace table once it's on their terms?
That's why I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Russia really wants peace anymore, because if they follow the art of war, this is exactly what you do. This is exactly what you do. Now, I did want to talk about Senator Grassley, FD0123, which is that FBI form, the FBI document that basically contradicts everything Biden said about Ukraine. And here's on the statement, the Burisma CEO, which is that corrupt company in Ukraine, it says it costs $5 million to pay one Biden. This is what the CEO said. And $5 million to buy the other Biden to fire the prosecutor investigating Burisma. Quote unquote, Hunter will take care of those issues through his dad, although Hunter was stupid and his dog was smarter. This is what the CEO of Burisma said. Chuck Grassley released this. It's sort of a big deal, but everybody's talking about other things going on right now. Let's dissect it quickly and move on with it. But don't you guys agree that this is going to have to come to some kind of conclusion, that you can't just hide this much corruption, or are we in for the play is in, and Biden's going to finish out and run again in 2024.
The Democrat Party establishment will do what's best for the Democrat Party establishment. If they believe he is too much of a liability, they will replace him. The problem is with who? Some suggest Hillary Clinton. She's a liability. Obviously, Kamala Harris, nobody wants her even in the Democratic Party. That woman is basically a foolish, ignorant woman. A political prostitute, literally. Who are they going to get? They're afraid of Robert Kennedy's son.
Yeah.
Because he's a traditional centrist Democrat. I certainly don't agree with him on every issue, but he's closer to the way the Democratic Party was in the day of JFK, in the days of Senator Scoop Jackson, Henry Jackson, in the days of Sam Nunn. He's that kind of Democrat. He's a vestige from an age gone by. They don't want him because they've moved too far to the left. So they don't want a traditional off-the-shelf Democrat. They don't want Harris because she's too much of a loser and too silly of a person. They're stuck with Biden. Who can they get? Hillary Clinton, well, she'd love that, but they have a problem. They have a problem. But the Republicans have a problem. I've been saying this from the beginning. Donald Trump, I do not believe God's hand is on him since he had that homosexual gala in Mar-a-Lago. I will not vote for him again. He promoted that thing, and Mr. Sanchez was right in pointing out he did promote it. I do not trust I cannot vote for him again, even though I voted for him twice. That's me personally. I'm not saying others shouldn't. I'm saying I won't. Additionally, his failed leadership in the midterm elections, when Biden was so unpopular, to have only narrowly taken back the House and even lost a seat in the Senate, even lost in the Senate. He took a carpetbagger, a Muslim who's a stooge for Erdogan, from Turkey, to run against Fetterman instead of having that wonderful black conservative woman, Catherine Barrett. Donald Trump was a complete and utter failure. He was a loser in the way he ran the midterm campaigns. He, Mitch McConnell, and the Republican National Committee share the blame, but Donald Trump is at the forefront of culpability. He proved himself to be somebody who could snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And my fear is he will do so again because God's hand is not on him anymore.
Now, two things real quick. So they want to censor RFK Jr. At the congressional hearing. They took a vote because they say he's anti-Semite. So they took a vote to censor him so he couldn't speak at the hearing. And so I think it was that Debbie girl from Florida.
Schultz, yeah.
Rule 11, Clause 2, which basically says that degradation claiming Kennedy was an anti-Semite, despicable things against Jews, against Chinese, and which is not true. And
not true. His father was assassinated by Sirhan for defending Israel. His father was killed because he supported Israel and the Jews. Right. Now all of a sudden his son's in it. Wasserman Schultz, we know that she had to resign as chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee because of her own actions, her misdeeds within the Democratic Party leadership. She's a reprehensible, disgusting individual if there ever was one.
Jacob,
who would they to yell when she's in a party with Olmert and
anti-Semitism?
Who is she to yell anti-Semitism about anybody other than the traitor she sees in the mirror?
That's right. So why are they so afraid of him, Jacob? Why are they so afraid of RFK Jr.?
Because he's a traditional Democrat. He is from the school of Joe Lieberman, of JFK, of Henry Jackson. He's a traditional Democrat. They don't exist anymore. That party has been hijacked and moved so far to the left. If you want to know what the traditional Democrat, I'll tell you what traditional Democrats are now. They're ideological equivalent of the old school centrist Democrats of JFK and Scoop Jackson. Rhino Republicans.
Mm,
Rhino Republicans are much closer to what JFK was and Thurman was,
yeah.
much closer than the present Democratic Party is to what JFK was.
Do you think, Jacob, within the society that still exists, that thinking is still exists for RFK to actually run and be a viable candidate?
The family name is not going to save him from the establishment.
Hmm.
They're happy for the Kennedy name to be an icon, a political icon of the party. But if he goes against the establishment,
Yeah.
remember, the Democratic Party is anti-democratic. It's anti-democracy. They have 100 super delegates. It doesn't matter what the people or the voters or the members of the Democratic Party want to vote. That doesn't matter. The super delegates, the establishment, are going to make the decisions. There's nothing democratic about the Democratic Party. It's anti-democratic. It's like feminism and feminists. There's nothing feminine about a feminist. It's a misnomer. Well, there's nothing democratic about a Democrat. Nothing.
So Trump says his arrest and indictment regarding January 6th is imminent. He received the letter from Jack Smith, the prosecuting attorney regarding the U.S. Capitol riots, and he might be indicted and arrested. Now, if this happens, and they censor JFK, they Trump may be in prison, running for office from prison. Jacob, what this country is going to look like? What is this country going to look like? Is it going to be mayhem, civil war? I mean, states.
For how many years have we been saying? Have we been warning? Democracy is disappearing.
Yep.
Because we have abandoned the biblical principles upon which it was founded and predicated, it is now disappearing. We've been saying that for 20 years.
Yeah.
And now it's happening.
It's happening fast. I mean, we had.
You didn't need to be, if you knew anything about history and about scripture, you didn't need to be brilliant to be a prognosticator and see it coming.
We had Gert last week on, and just Netherlands is so much like that. It's corrupt in so many ways. But here they're in the UK, Jacob, where you are. So if they don't like political opponents like Nigel Farage, they just cancel his bank accounts.
Yes.
And this is what happened. They debanked him.
Yes.
They keep debanking him. Obviously, they apologize. But his business account still closed. And the reason why
the account is closed, and what they're offering him is not a Coots account. It's with the parent company, NatWest, which is a reprehensible company anyway.
Jacob, have you seen this? I mean, it's gotten to the point where so they got him for the Brexit, they got him for his anti-immigration, views, they got him for conservative views. So if they don't like you in the UK, they just shut your bank account. Very similar to what goes on here.
Well, what did Trudeau do with the truck drivers in Canada?
That's right. They did.
Democracy is almost gone.
Rishi Sunak basically said this is wrong. We shouldn't use this against political views, against people that have different political views. Free speech is a cornerstone for our democracy. I don't know if he really believes it or he just had to say whatever he needed to be said. But here in the States, there's really no one that can come to the help of a conservative if they debank or deplatform. Nothing.
No, just look at what Zuckerberg has done. An enemy of democracy, Mark Zuckerberg. That man is an enemy of democracy. He's an enemy of free speech. He's an enemy of what America is. I consider that man to be an enemy of America because he's an enemy of the Bill of Rights. He's just a wicked person. But Google's no better.
Yeah.
Dorsey's no better.
Yeah. One of the ones that I blame the most is the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Absolutely.
Southern Poverty Law Center. Now they have a registry of who they think it's racist, hate group, and all that. And they have a ranking, and those rankings are used by banks and other organizations to whether or not to give you access or not.
Let's remember the Southern Poverty Law Center are a brood of frauds. They jumped on the bandwagon in 1970 of the Civil Rights Movement. They don't have the history of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference or the NAACP. They were latecomers. They came after the Civil Rights Act was signed by Johnson. They jumped on a bandwagon.
Wow.
With a political agenda. They were not part of the struggle. The struggle was over by the time they even arrived on the scene. They're simply a political mechanism that misuses the judiciary for political ends. On top of that, they are absolutely guilty of an institutionalized slander and defamation of anyone they disagree with politically, calling people racist who are not, et cetera, et cetera.
One of the things the Southern Poverty Law Center have been criticized, and rightly so, it's seemingly, well, I don't think it's seemingly, I think it's overt, their hatred of Christian organizations. They make no qualms about it.
Yes.
If you're a Christian organization and you are anti-abortion, if you're anti-LGBT, they will go after you and try to debank you. You won't be able to get a bank account. And it's one of the things they target the most. So it's an anti-Christian organization.
Yes, of course it is.
And still they collect, what was the thing? They said that they were going to collect $50 million and they won't be asking for more money. Then they collected $100 million and they said, we won't be asking for more money. Then they collected $200 million and now they're going to keep asking for more money.
Of course. Like Black Lives Matter, it's a racket.
Yeah, and they went bankrupt too. So unbelievable. This is where we are today. This is the landscape in which Christians have to be navigating through. Whether you're a Christian business, Christian organization, Christian ministry. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Southern Poverty Law Center had you, Jacob, on their scope.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
They're on my scope.
Yeah. But if they're after you, God's after them. So we wouldn't worry about that.
If they're after Christians, God is after them.
That's right.
Who's going to win?
We want to remind everyone as we're watching Jacob live here and David live here, we are live on Facebook and YouTube, but we're also live on Rumble and Morial.tv and MorialTV.org and Telegram and Vimeo. We're going to be taking some questions at the end, but we're not going to do it on YouTube and Facebook. So we're going to jump over to Rumble and take those questions. So start thinking about your questions now as we get into the BRICS and the currency. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about digital currency and CBDCs and the mark of the beast on Backstage. So make sure you jump over to Backstage and get a hold of that because it's going to be absolutely fascinating. Jacob, you're going to be in South Africa in August. At the same time, in Johannesburg, they're going to be having the BRICS conference. So,
Yes.
God's sovereign. So he knew you would be there. It's picking up speed, it says. Financial markets are changing. BRICS,
Yes.
which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are going to implement something that they have been wanting for some time. Now, this is nothing new, but now it's picking up speed. Their own currency, their reserve currency backed by gold. They said that, well, because they had their meeting in June at the Cape of Good Hope, they believe that they have the good hope of having this resolved. Now, whether Putin's going to be there or not, that seems to be the biggest controversy. But on August 22nd through the 24th, they're going to be approaching the decision whether to have a reserve currency backed by gold. Jacob, take us back, 1971, Nixon, where we are now, and exactly what this
After
means.
Brenton Woods, and coming forth into 1971, when Nixon defaulted on the dollar, okay? Now you're not going to get gold for the dollar anymore, okay? The United States went off the gold standard. You have a dollar based on the promise of a corrupt government. Well, what's going to give it value? They went into petrodollars, oil, in league with the Saudi Arabians, having to pander to the Saudi Arabians, left, right, and center, but they did that because they needed Saudi oil. Now, Saudi Arabia is going to BRICS. Now, BRICS has accumulated significant amount of gold reserves. Now, ultimately, we know this won't work because we're told in the Epistle of James, those who have this gold, it's going to be as if the gold rusts. Gold is not naturally oxidized, but it's going to become worthless. Well, it will. It's amazing what will happen in a famine and a food shortage. If you can't eat it, it's not worth anything.
It's not worth anything.
But in the short to medium term, what gives BRICS potential power is the petrodollar is finished, as we've known it. The petrodollar is not what it was. We can thank Biden largely for that and his incompetence, though it's more than Biden, but he's above all. And the gold backing that they would want to give a BRICS. Again, this has been another factor in why the United States and NATO want to perpetuate the war in the Ukraine, to weaken the Russian ruble.
That's right.
And to make sure that the Russian ruble will not become a petrol currency to rival the dollar, now especially since Saudi Arabia and Iran are moving in that direction. The real struggle for global dominance in the short to medium term is about reserve currency. This is the thing. Now, BRICS has its own problems. The conflict between China and India is one of them. That is a major one. The devaluation of the Russian ruble is another one. The euro failed to replace the dollar. The combined economy post-Brexit now of the UK, of the EU rather, is now less than the American economy. The United States economy is bigger than the whole EU post-Brexit, once again. The euro did not replace the dollar as some people thought it was going to or wanted it to. It didn't. The question is, will BRICS be able to do something? However, what I point to the most is the thinking that many people and many Christians have that the mark of the beast will be a currency. It doesn't say that. It says you cannot buy or sell without it. It will be a permit to engage in commerce or trade. It'll be a permit. Think of social credit scoring.
Yep.
It'll be a permit. Think if you can have an active bank account if you don't like your politics.
Yeah.
Like they
Nigel
do with
Farage.
Nigel Farage, or like with what Trudeau did in Canada.
Yeah.
That is much more of a concern to me in terms of, from the perspective of Revelation 13, than a digital currency is. I do personally think, because of the inherent weaknesses in BRIC at this time, that if the dollar is to be replaced by a alternative reserve currency, it is more likely to be something I've been saying for some time. It will be an exchange rate mechanism between central banks. The European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, all they need is an exchange rate mechanism of $1 to €1, fixing their interest rates to hold that value in place in a one-for-one exchange. You bring other countries into it. Certainly Australia, Canada would be countries that would automatically be drawn into it because of their ties to the British and American economies. And I'm sorry, to the British and European economies. The pound would be drawn into it. I think that exchange rate mechanisms between central banks are much more likely to create a digital currency that could become a reserve currency than BRIC at the present time. But BRIC is going to try the same as the euro did. But I don't think they're going to succeed beyond a limited point in the same way the euro didn't succeed beyond a limited point. That's not to say they won't succeed at all, but they're not going to rival the dollar at the present time. That's not how it's likely to happen, to the best of my analysis.
Yeah.
Now, what I would also say is this. Russia has been selling oil, and it has been unable to find alternative markets for its natural gas. It doesn't have these ship containers to do it, but it's having to sell oil at a discount to Russia and to China and India, and it's doing that. But it's selling the oil at a discount at a time when oil prices have gone down somewhat, and it's not selling refined oil, it's selling crude, because India and China have their own refining capacity. This is hurting Russia. But what's really hurting Russia is this. China will not buy the crude from Russia in rubles. They'll buy it in yuan. And India is not buying the oil from Russia in rubles. It's buying it in rupees. So Putin's having to discount this oil that's worth less, that's not refined, it's just crude, so it's not worth as much. And with the declining spot market prices anyway, on top of that, and he's being stuck with currencies that are not popularly traded or in demand outside of India and China. He desperately needs some kind of a BRICS bailout.
Yeah.
But with the ruble going so low, he's not going to get it.
Several countries want to get into BRICS: Saudi, the UAE, Egypt, Iran, Algeria, Argentina, Kazakhstan. If all these BRICS countries come in, which they already have 5 of them, obviously big ones, 3.2 billion people, that's a lot. That's a big percentage of the population in the world that's going to have
40%
access.
of the world's population, 40%. But remember something. Remember something. There can only be one captain of a ship. It's either going to be the United States, which thanks to Biden is in a precarious position now, thanks to Joe Obama, or it's going to be China.
Interesting.
An anti-democratic country that's polluting the planet like there's no tomorrow because there is no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Jacob, and they'll go with them.
You're going to be speaking to South Africans there. And I wonder, obviously you're going to encourage them in the Lord and things that they need to do as Christians. But one of the things South Africa is, it's at a crossroad. They either are going to burn bridges with Russia, or they're going to damage the relationships with the U.S., but they can't have both, seemingly. They're either going to have to trade with the U.S. and the Western nations, or they're going to have to go east. And there are many people irritated, many countries in the West irritated with South Africa because of its warm relationship to Moscow. Where do you think South Africa stands? I mean, it's been a mess the last years.
Okay, first of all, the corruption of South Africa and the ANC is ridiculous.
Yes.
As much as I disliked and disrespected Desmond Tutu because of his pro-lesbian, pro-homosexual thing, as much as I disliked that man, before he died, he said one thing. The ANC shows that South Africa said what I said in different words. South Africa, in getting rid of apartheid, replaced one evil with another. He knew the new South Africa was just as bad as the old one because of the ANC.
Yeah.
I don't like Tutu, but he told the truth about that before he died. It is completely and hopelessly, desperately corrupt. Black people are significantly worse off now than they were under apartheid, and I was against apartheid. Yeah. White people are leaving left and right, and many have left. Yeah. It's a rich country turned into a poor one. Yeah. Same as what Mugabe did in Zimbabwe. They turned a rich country into a poor one with corruption, waste, mismanagement, socialism, etc. However, there's something else that happens. In tribal Africa, homosexuality, despite Tutu, is not culturally acceptable. It's seen as unnatural among Black Africans and many other tribal peoples. An official from Zambia, next to South Africa, and I've been to Zambia, said, Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, came to our country. China comes here with its Belt and Road Initiative to build things, to look for business opportunities.
Right.
Kamala Harris lectured us about changing our policies and our attitudes towards LGBTQ. Who are the Black Africans going to listen to? China or her? Yeah. She's pushing a social pansexual agenda, and China is pushing its own agenda. Now, these countries in Africa who are buying into the Belt and Road Initiative are putting themselves into unbelievable debt to China. It's not aid. It's a form of mercantilism. It's a form of mercantilism. It's economic colonialism. They're going to find out, and some are already admitting what China is doing to Africa and other third world countries like Sri Lanka. They're finding out what it is. But when you've got Kamala Harris talking about LGBTQ I was in Uganda visiting an orphanage that we're associated with. My son, young black guy, Andrew, I'm the sponsor father. Kid with AIDS, lovely. I know this was a very little boy. He was a baby, basically. But, he's the kid I sponsored. And I was there with Dave Royal, and we were looking at their work and seeing if we could help and work with them at this mission in Uganda. Hillary Clinton is there at the same time. Tons of American Air Force personnel fly in with her in these American aircraft, transport planes. She's there threatening the Uganda government that economic aid is going to be withheld if they don't change their policies on homosexuality and lesbianism.
Right.
Bearing in mind, Africa, Black Africa, Uganda has already been and is being decimated by AIDS. Homosexuality would obviously only increase it. She doesn't care how many blacks they kill. That's not her agenda. This is Kamala Harris. This is Hillary Clinton. Yet there are people stupid enough in the United States. There are people stupid enough, men and women, to vote for them. Well, when you get to Africa, you see the realities. And the realities are China is in the economic and political ascent, and America and the West are in the decline as a direct result of American policies.
Yeah,
particularly under Obama.
Yeah, that's why I think maybe South Africa chooses to go east. Chooses to go east because of that.
If South Africa did not mine gold, if it didn't have so much gold, the rand would be worthless. Their currency would be worthless if they didn't produce so much gold in South Africa.
Yeah. One of the things, Jacob, you mentioned about Hillary Clinton when she went to Uganda, they also talked about abortion, that they would not get any funding unless they opened themselves up to more abortions, which is absolutely insane if you think that Hillary Clinton cares about Black people. You could see her right there. She doesn't. You could see right there that she doesn't. Jacob, real quick, before we finish this section of catching up, simultaneously, the U.S. Senate is introducing a bill that's going to bolster the Abraham Accords. Using the Negev Forum members and nations that have signed on already. This is a bill that is both sides, Democrat and Republican, normalizing the regional integration of the Middle East. You've talked about the Abraham Accords here quite a bit. It's gone silent for some time, but you can't underestimate the fact that the Middle East wants its own regional forum or economic power there. They'll trade with the East, they'll trade with the West, because they're right in the middle. But do you have any concerns at the moment of how the Abraham Accord could evolve into something more nefarious against Israel?
We know ultimately that the Antichrist and false prophet will bring a false peace to the Middle East. They will bring a false peace and then break the treaty they make with Israel. It's a covenant with death, a false peace. And that peace will be predicated not just on politics and economics, but also religion. And I absolutely see the Abraham Accords as a step in that direction. Remember, Jared Kushner, an unsaved Jew, son-in-law of Donald Trump, was the primary architect and engineer of it. I don't think Donald Trump knew what he was dealing with prophetically or theologically.
Right.
The believers he surrounded himself with tended to be the lunatic fringe. What you'd expect. I don't think he realized the ramifications of what he was doing. But we need to realize what the Abraham Accords is pointing to. It's not about Dubai, which is where it's based. Their multi-faith worship center with the mosque, the so-called church, and the synagogue under one roof in one complex. It's not about Dubai. And Abu Dhabi. It's not about Abu Dhabi. It's about Jerusalem. It's about Revelation 11, the outer court given to the Gentiles.
Right now, it's economically, and it has a bit of portion of religion, but it's mainly economically. That's going to be the leverage, at least to get into it.
Saudi Arabia is threatened, among other things, by rivalry from the rise of places like Dubai that have a non-oil based economy. Okay. Dubai has a non-oil based economy. Saudi Arabia is purely oil based. They want to build the city Neon, which is very interestingly where the real Mount Sinai most certainly was, up on the Gulf of Aqaba, close to Israel, and inlet from the Dead Sea, okay, past Sharm el-Sheikh, going up towards Eilat. In order to do this, it would be very much in the Saudi interests, economically, politically, and practically, to have a peace with Israel. The reasons being, among other things, access to Israeli high-tech resources. Israel is the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. Many American high-tech companies have research and development facilities in Israel and own these Israeli high-tech upstart companies. Israel is the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. Okay? Saudi Arabia knows that. Saudi Arabia also knows it can't trust Iran, even though it makes a piece of convenience brokered by China with Iran. The Sunni Shia hatred is too ingrained and it's not going away easily. Okay? They know Israel has muscle and that Iran would have a common enemy with Israel and Saudi Arabia together. The Saudi Arabians have their interest economically and strategically, but ultimately it will have a religious crown. It'll be Revelation 11, no doubt.
Jacob, the recent comments from Netanyahu and Biden, between the two of them, especially the last one, Biden saying if Netanyahu doesn't change the judicial reforms, he's going to damage the relationship here. You think Israel shifts more to the east into this economic forums like the Negev one, like the Abraham Accord, knowing that the U.S. is not a partner as good as it used to be?
Israel is still linked for strategic, financial, and technological reasons to the United States. But I think it would push Israel more in that direction simply because of remember, Israel was betrayed, sold down the river, knifed in the back by Barack Obama.
Yep, several times.
Barack Obama knifed Israel in the back. He stabbed Israel in the back with the support of stupid American Jews. He knifed Israel in the back with the UNESCO vote. Okay? Biden has pushed this further. It is not an Israel friendly administration. President Herzog addressed the U.S. Congress and tried to smooth things over by making general appeals to American-Israeli relations, but underneath there's a problem. That problem is not simply the judicial system. It involves that, but it is more than that. It is the settlements. Israel has a growing population of Jews. Where are you going to put them? The West Bank is the only place other than certain areas of the Negev. Where are you going to put them? You wouldn't believe the neighborhoods I used to drive through in Jerusalem have traffic jams now. It's unbelievable what's happened in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa. These things have become overcrowded. Overcrowded. You got to put the people somewhere. And there's more Jews are going to be coming.
Yeah.
For sure. The latest batch was from France because of the growing anti-Semitism in France. It's that. But let's talk about the judicial reform, wanting the parliament, the Knesset, to be able to reverse court decisions. What's happening in Israel is what's happening in the United States. Activist judges legislating from the bench. You had that Reagan-nominated homosexual judge in California who outlawed Proposition 8, went directly against the democratic will of the majority of the citizens in California who voted to keep marriage heterosexual. And he outlawed it, a Republican judge appointed by Bush and nominated by Reagan. The judiciary setting itself up above the elected representatives of the people. This is a problem in the United States. Many Supreme Court decisions are unconstitutional. Many. Roe v. Wade was one of them. But the same-sex marriage was another. It's unconstitutional.
Overfell decision, yeah.
You know, it's unconstitutional. It's a global problem. Now, if Israel is going to react to this problem, it creates problems for the United States because activist judges will be facing the same kind of opposition and threats. Now, it is a complicated situation in Israel because of the coalition politics. You'd have religious parties reversing decisions they didn't like by judges. Okay? You would have the parliament acting as the judiciary instead of the judiciary acting as the parliament. Well, the United States would be the same. Right now, you have the judiciary acting as the Congress.
Yeah.
Now, or you're going to have the Congress acting as the judiciary. It is not an Israeli problem. It is an American problem as much as an Israeli problem. The question is, how do you address this problem? I personally think the best way to address it is as follows. A legislature or a Congress or a parliament should not be able to reverse court decisions. What they should be able to do is impeach a judge, any judge, for judicial activism. Legislating from the bench should be automatic grounds for impeachment and removal. Congress should have the right to veto the decision of a court when it usurps the role of Parliament, Congress, or legislature. They should have the right to veto it, and any judge who does it should be impeached. That is my particular view. But I don't believe that legislature should act as a court any more than I believe a court should act as a legislature.
Very good. Well, Jacob, they should call you for that, and you can give them your take on it, and maybe you should run for office in Israel. Just kidding. No, all kidding aside, we're going to be talking more about the CBDC and the currency, and especially how it affects Israel going forward on Backstage. So we do want to thank all of you guys for watching and being with us live here. We're going to be heading out of YouTube and Facebook and heading over to Rumble. We're already there on Memorial.tv, memorialtv.org, and Vimeo and Telegram. We're going to be on there. And so please join us. We got some questions for Jacob. We got some questions that he needs to answer. Plus, we got some backstage, some videos on the CBDC, the permission, the global ID, digital ID, and the mark of the beast. So join us for that. Thank you guys for being with us. God bless
As
you.
always, yes. As always, Marco, we encourage our viewers, do not watch us on YouTube. Please watch us on Moriel.tv, MorielTV.org. Watch us on Rumble, on Telegram. Watch us on RTN. Watch us on an alternative platform. But don't watch us on YouTube. We have our own servers, and we do not want to be under the control of a increasingly godless, anti-Judeo-Christian power that be in Silicon Valley who are going to censor us and others like us. Please watch us on our own platforms. You can go to Moriel.tv, MorielTV.org. You have RTN. You have right now Rumble, where we're going to have the Q&A. We have Telegram, but please don't watch us on YouTube.
Well, God bless you guys. We'll see you in a few seconds on Backstage.
Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan, to India to Africa, and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.